Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur, and welcome to the Apptrepreneur Show. This is our live stream slash podcast series where we talk about apps, pop culture, and life in between. And I'm, of course, your host, Kevin. So, I promised you a little live stream Monday. I am fulfilling that promise. Now, the funny thing is, I kind of forgot exactly what we were supposed to talk about, but a topic has arisen that definitely is a moral gray area, so I have decided that this is what I want to talk about. And since this is a live stream, for those of you who might be watching this video after the fact, if you see this video is like an hour long or something to that effect, don't panic. You can watch somewhere between 10 to 20 minutes, usually 15 or less, and you can get the entire scope of what we talk about. Anything after that is usually just a little bit of banter and answering questions from the audience who is joining us live. And greetings, Mohammed. So happy that you can join us today. So, anyway, this is an interesting story because one of the things that we have been talking about in regards to remote work, hey, repair your PC, is how much control should the company have when it comes to being in the house. Now, of course, I champion remote work. This channel's kind of transferred into a remote work cheerleader channel, if you will. I've always been a fan of working at your own schedule. That's why I liked Uber and DoorDash originally before they, started paying terribly, of course. But here's the thing, even though I want to work remotely and I think employees should be given the option to work remotely, there has been some questions of how much should the company legally and ethically be allowed to watch you. Now, when they're providing their equipment and everything, I believe there are some common sense things. First of all, you shouldn't be putting personal programs and stuff on your company's PC. No Steam, no TikTok, no nothing like that. I believe that on the company's property, hey Payman, how you doing? Welcome. I believe you subject yourself to your employer looking at your browsing history. I believe you should not be doing things. Well, there are certain things you shouldn't be doing when you're using your company's equipment. I believe that they should be allowed to look at that. Now, we've been talking a little bit about things like Microsoft Teams and stuff where they're actually measuring, like making sure you're always being active on the computer. Whereas, like, hey, if you're not actually like, I don't know if you can hear that, typing on a keyboard at every single second, then the Microsoft Teams can alert the manager that you're not doing that. I think companies technically have a right to do that. I don't think they should. I think that's a level of micromanagement that you should really not cross that line. And then we have today's story when it comes to the webcam. Most of the time when you are given equipment to work remotely or work from home, you are going to have a webcam. And I don't oppose this. I mean, one of the arguments people make is like, well, why should I come into the office? Let's have meetings over Zoom or something like that. Let's use our technology so that we can have meetings at home. I mean, it is technology that brings me into your house and you welcome me into that house. But here's the thing. What happens when companies feel like because you have their equipment and you are working from home, that they should have the right to look at you all the time? That's kind of the dilemma with this woman. So there's this woman who she took a job with an employer. Now, she didn't say who the employer was. Probably good. I bet the employer would sue her. And she said that this company was found through one of those job hunting places. Those places where you hand a company an application and they find jobs for you and they say, would this interest you? Would this interest you? Would this interest you? Those companies serve a purpose, but these jobs also tend to not be the greatest sometimes, especially with what they do once you're actually hired on. And she got onto a technology company, decided to work for their finances department, and they said, yeah, you can work remotely. Here's the computer, here's the keyboard, and here, of course, is the web camera. So here's the thing. She goes home, she starts working, and what she does not realize is the webcam is always on. And so she's doing some work. She's doing fine. She's just doing her work. And then she decides at one point, I want to get up and get something to drink. This is something that a lot of people do. They get up, they get something to drink, they go to the bathroom, and she gets up, goes into the kitchen to make some coffee. And she comes back into the living room, which is very close to the kitchen, I should add. She sees that she has been locked out of the system, and there is a picture of her making coffee in the kitchen. And the program has told her that she's not at the desk, and so action will now be required. She has to reach out to her supervisor to unlock the system so she can continue work. Now, she thinks this is crazy. Now, she reaches out to the supervisor, and the supervisor says, yeah, unless you're on like a official break or lunch, if you're not sitting at your desk, the webcam will, in fact, pick up that you're not there, and it will lock you out of the system, and you will have to reach out to a supervisor to unlock the system. Now, this understandably creeps her out a little bit, because if the camera is watching you the whole time, by extension, does someone from the company have the power to watch her the whole time? And look, there's no judgment on here. We all do things that maybe if we knew we were being watched, we wouldn't be doing. They've written novels and movies about this, how some people are born, I believe like Final Cut or whatever, it was that Robin Williams movie. Very fascinating movie where he cuts up memories from people who are deceased to play at their funerals. And it's a world where people could put cameras in their head and they can record what they're doing. Well, some people are born with cameras in their head. And there's even one woman who didn't realize she was born with a camera in her head. When she found out, she started acting differently. She started being a lot more polite because now she knows someone's watching her the whole time. It is a very interesting phenomenon that we're kind of just starting to really delve with what this looks like, where, we're all in a camera of some sort, even people who vlog, and I don't want to get on those people. I like Adam the Woo. He's actually a pretty cool guy, if you ask me. I've met him a few times. But, when he does his video live streaming, well, not live stream, but his recording thing, and there are people in the background, do those people necessarily want to be in his vlog? And what happens if someone recognizes them that they don't want to be recognized? Like, this is why witness protection's job has become a lot more difficult, because people go to a new town or a new city, new names, and then they wind up on someone's random vlog that the people who want to find them see, and then there's problems. So we're kind of just starting to really see the danger of what something like this can bring. And this woman decided, heck no, I'm working for you, but I don't think you have the right to be filming me this whole time. I'm not necessarily doing anything wrong, I just don't think you should be allowed to do that. So she unplugs the camera. Well then, of course, the next day, the company informs her she must plug the camera in so that they can basically watch her every move. They want to make sure she is at the desk and she is not leaving. It's kind of that thing that I brought up in our last live stream, where some of these companies, it's like, hey, I'm going to go on my 10-minute break. And they go like, all right, it starts now, be back by this time. Because in their mind, they don't want you to have, an extra 2 minutes on the clock to walk to your break room. I mean, it's really strange how they think. It's like, if you're on the clock, you need to be working for them unless you are legally required not to be working for them. And so this woman says no. No. First of all, it's creepy enough that you were recording me that whole time and you actually suspended my work because I decided to get up and get some coffee. And then on top of that, because I don't want to be filmed all day, I unplugged the camera and now you're telling me not to do that. So she does what most people these days do. She goes on TikTok and she shares these experiences because she thinks they're creepy and she thinks that they overstep their bounds on what an employer is allowed to do. Now, I want to say up front, I agree with her. I think this is way overstepping bounds on the company's part. I don't believe that just because people are at home gives you the right to record them the whole time. I believe with most of the tools that we have on our arsenal that there is no reason to actually be scanning people and spying on them this way. Google Docs will tell you when the document was last edited. Microsoft Teams records interactions between you and your fellow employees. Zoom keeps a video catalog of your meetings. And of course, there's that quota. If you have a certain amount of stuff you need to do that day and you do it, then there should not be an issue whatsoever. Whether you got it done early or 2 minutes before you were clocking off, doesn't matter. This is what was expected of you, and you did it. I don't believe that should be a problem. There's enough tools that if people are slacking off, you will know that they are slacking off. So to say that you need to plug in a webcam and the employer has the right to be looking through that webcam all day if they want, I think that's taking it a step too far. But here's the other thing. Remember how we were talking about how people were getting fired for talking about the grievances with the companies they work with on TikTok? Well, this woman found herself suspended by the company for complaining about these conditions on TikTok. Now, someone left a very funny comment where basically people are getting fired and suspended by complaining about their companies on TikTok. And then, of course, they go on TikTok to let people know that they got fired and suspended on TikTok. Like, there is an ironic addiction to this platform that it's like, if it got you into trouble the first time, maybe you should stop using it. Maybe you should show some restraint. And maybe even delete your TikTok account if you cannot help yourself and you're just going to basically tattle on yourself. I mean, that probably would be wise, and that was, Friday, or maybe it was Saturday's big discussion about whether or not you should be using TikTok if you want to keep your job. But then you have situations like this where this is creepy. And I think it does pose some very ethical questions. Like, just because people want to work from home doesn't mean they want their employers looking at them the whole time. Because what are they going to do with that video footage that they're recording? Like, why? And when you go into the office, it's not like people are literally standing over your shoulder and watching you the entire time. And the reason I know this is because if that happened quite a bit, most people would probably leave those jobs because that's a little creepy. And you kind of get the sense that you could get fired at any moment. And yet companies don't think twice about requiring their employees to plug in a webcam and record everything that they do in their house. Even though it's their house, and there's some debate about how much access to that house you should have, well, the companies feel like they do. And so I read the story and I thought, I don't really know what the solution to this is, because it is becoming more and more clear that remote work will have to be legislated to a large degree. They're going to have to legislate what are the boundaries that can be crossed and which ones should companies not cross if someone is working remotely. They have to set rules that say what kind of jobs, do they have to consider remote work, and which ones, is remote work maybe just never an option, like legally. And then they're going to have to write down, and by the way, once we start requiring remote work, you can't be shipping these jobs to the Philippines or Taiwan or wherever they send them. They have to stay in America. And by the way, if you hire someone in Kentucky and you're in Southern California, you got to pay them a Southern California wage. You can't pay them like a Kentucky wage. Not unless you're physically there and that's where you primarily operate. We're going to have to figure this out. And I think the sooner that they figure this out, the better. Because, again, I know that I am perfectly okay with companies looking at a few things. Browsing history, the time you clocked on and the time you clocked off, keeping records of chats through Microsoft Teams and Zoom. This is all fine. I totally understand this. And yes, you're going to have to use a webcam for those meetings. But when that webcam is always on, and it's watching you like a hawk, and watching everything you do, and it's storing that footage somewhere in the company's servers, well, at that point, I think that there's some major problems. That's a company I would strongly encourage you not to work for, and I think there should be some legal thing that says, stop. Are you in a meeting? No? Well then, maybe you don't need to see what they're doing at their desk when they're doing their work. You don't need to see that. If they're downloading stuff that they shouldn't be downloading, you know what? The browser history check will definitely, catch up on all that. So I don't know. It's just like one more thing to consider in this remote work future. But anyway, that's basically the story. So I'd like to know what your thoughts on this are. Do you believe the company was in the right to have the camera on this employee the whole time? Or do you think it was an overstep? Do you think that this is something that they should not be doing? And then, final question, I think this woman should have reported it on TikTok? Or do you think she should have just not said anything at all? Is this one of those areas where maybe talking about it on TikTok isn't necessarily a great thing? I would really love to know what you think about that. So, you know the drill. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. And if you want to spend some time chatting, let's give it at least a minute. If anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer any of those questions within reason, and we'll kind of see where the rest of the night takes off. And if nobody asks anything within a minute or two, I will consider the episode closed and we will move on. And I will see you in a... I discovered at least one video, by the way, that I had recorded before this trip, so I've scheduled it to upload on Wednesday morning. So, and it's an interesting one, if I do say so myself. So, I'm going to recommend that one. So, actually, there might be one more topic I would consider talking about today. I mean, this is technically supposed to be like a multiple show thing. Let me see if I can't find the article, because it's really a story that isn't new per se. It's just sad to see that not only is it still happening, but that it's getting worse. So let's actually talk about this second topic before we officially sign off. And I would still be okay with anyone who wants to ask some questions. So one of the big controversies ever since Uber and Lyft began was, what is your responsibility to the passenger? Like, what are you realistically supposed to put up with? Now, obviously, if someone's being like a total jackass and destroying your car, you shouldn't have to put up with that. But when people get in the car and it's like, hey, I want to go here, I want to go through the drive-thru, like, are you obligated to take that person through the drive-thru? And even if you say that, well, look, I'll go through the drive-thru, but you can't eat in the car, what happens if you go through the drive-thru and they start eating in the car? This happens all the time. And it got to the point where, and I've been upfront about this, at one point I basically said, no more drive-thrus. It's just a no. I'll take you to your destination. You don't need to go through McDonald's, or Taco Bell was the worst, because even if I would tell them, don't eat your Taco Bell, once the food was in their hands, they'd start eating it, and you'd have lettuce and nacho cheese. And you know what? I know this is like a controversy for me, but I do not mind saying it. Cleaning fee every single time, even if it wasn't that much of a mess, because I told them not to eat in the car and they did, and so I'm going to charge you a cleaning fee. I know, not nice, but this is a business, not a charity. And if I have to spend any amount of time cleaning, it's coming out of your pocket. Well, here's the thing. On TikTok, because I suspect TikTok's going to be a reoccurring theme in most of our videos, because this is where most of the news is coming from, an Uber driver by the name of Neil Jordan shared a video, and he talked about a trip where he went above and beyond for someone, like way above and beyond, and basically got stifled. So Neil went and picked up someone who wanted to go pick up their groceries at Walmart. So he brings the person to Walmart, and he waits in the car for like 15 minutes or so while they get their Walmart groceries, and he helps them put the groceries in his trunk. Now, on the way home from Walmart, they decide they want to get Taco Bell, and so he decides to get them Taco Bell. He goes through the drive-thru for them. Now, in all fairness, they do not eat the Taco Bell in the car. At least as far as I'm aware, they didn't do that. And he brings them home. Now, this trip was like 40 minutes or something like that. It was a long trip. And he was hoping that with all of this extra stuff he did, that he would get tipped well. Well, he did not. His tip was $0.00. And Uber paid him $5.96. Now, he's complaining about this on TikTok, and one of the things he said is, the people who expect you to do the most tip the least. Now, by the way, this is not unique to Uber or Lyft. If you talk to anyone who has worked in the restaurant business, if they come to a table and the people at that table are demanding and they are pushing for you to do extra things, if they're just overly dramatic and they want special treatment, you know you're not getting a tip. Because these are the people who feel entitled. They feel like you are getting paid to do a job, and you just got to do what they want you to do. As my dad said, there are people out there that believe that just because you work for them gives them the right to abuse you, which of course is not true. And this Uber TikTok video has inspired people to talk about, like, well, that seems like really low. Should there be like standardized tips for when you go above and beyond? Should Uber drivers go through the drive-thru? Like, what do you do? And look, my thing is, I don't think there's really anything you can do other than if you do not like what this is, you obviously got to not drive for Uber or Lyft. Because, look, strictly speaking, with Uber and Lyft, what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to take them to their destination. Nothing more, nothing less. But people tackle on extra trips, extra things. I mean, when I did the graveyard shift and picked up people from bars all the time, they always asked to go through the drive-thru, things like that, and rarely did they tip for that. They felt they were entitled to that trip to Del Taco or something like that. And you wouldn't get anything for it. Never mind that they're probably going to mess up your car because they're going to eat it in the car. So, the thing is, even though this has started a debate for some people now, this is nothing new to me. This debate has been going on for a very, very long time, and when I did it, I had some rules, like, Typically, no, you're not. We're not going through the drive-through. If we do go through the drive-through, you are not to eat in the car. And if you do eat in the car and there's anything on there, I'm going to charge a cleaning fee for you because I told you not to do that. Now, there are some people, especially when it came to like, Walmart or grocery store orders, I didn't mind that so much because they were usually calling Uber out of desperation. Now, if I were starting that whole thing today, knowing that there's Uber Eats and Instacart and DoorDash, I'd probably politely tell them no. I can drop you off at the grocery store if you want, but the trip's going to end at that point, and you're going to have to get another ride home. That's what I would do. But one of the bigger things is that clearly this was a situation where the time was what was adding up. This guy was not driving very far. The Walmart and the Taco Bell was probably right next to each other. They were probably just a few miles from the person's house. But because of all the sitting and the waiting and the fact that Uber does not have a payment thing where like you are guaranteed at least a minimum wage for the hour that you take, that's what's causing these problems. Uber and Lyft should factor in with the wait time. The wait time, pay at least a minimum wage. At least minimum wage. So that you don't get stuck in these situations where people go to the grocery store and they're like, oh, can you please wait while we're coming out here? Well, you shouldn't wait, especially when they're paying 2 to 3 cents a minute, something crazy low like that. But hey, if you're making the 35 cents per minute waiting like it used to be, okay, you'd probably wait for that, find some shade, turn off the car, you're on the clock. That's great, because you knew that if they take an hour of your time, at least you're making minimum wage, plus whatever you drove in the miles. But they're not doing that, and so stories like this are going to be scrutinized more and more. But here's the sad thing, and the other aspect of this is that despite however much it's discussed, however much people debate whether this is right or wrong, nothing's going to change the fact that Uber pays too little and the people using the service cannot be depended on to help you financially, especially those that ask to do an awful lot. If they ask you to do, if they want you to go to the moon and back and they don't give you that tip up front, they probably never will. And that's just an issue that has always been there and is probably never going to go away. So anyway, that's the other story for this episode. So I didn't see anyone ask any questions there all that time. I'm going to assume that no one has anything to ask. So we're going to end the show right there. But thank you so much for joining me, even if it was just a few of you. And comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. And as always, flame responsibly. I will be back in town next week, so the videos should return to their normal state and we can finally get rid of the llamas. In the meantime, take care everyone and flame responsibly.